All right, everyone, let's take a look at question number 10. So in question number 10, we have two graphs, and the first one is f of x. Now, f of x, be careful when you have questions like this. F of x is this graph right here. G of x is this graph right here, right? And it says if g of x equals k times f of x, what is the value of k? So what we want to figure out is what are we multiplying f of x by, right? This graph right here that will create g of x. Well, in order to do that, let's look at what the equation of the line is. So for f of x, we would have y equals our y-intercept is 1 plus 1, so we're doing 1. That's our starting value. And then our slope, which would be the coefficient of x, is going to be a negative coefficient because we're going downhill, so I know it's negative. And I'm doing rise over run, so I'm going up and down 2 and over 1, so it would be 2 or 2 over 1. So this is going to be negative 2x plus 1. That's the equation of f of x. G of x, on the other hand, is y equals. Here, my y-intercept is negative 3. And then my slope is positive, though, in this case, because I'm going uphill. And so that's going to be, let's see, we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 1. So that's going to be 6x minus 3. So the question is, how do I get from this equation to this equation? Well, what would I multiply by? Well, to get from negative 2 to 6, I would multiply by negative 3. And to get from positive 1 to negative 3, I would multiply by negative 3. So this means that k equals negative 3. That's the number that I would multiply g of x, or sorry, f of x by in order to create g of x. Let's look at number 11. So number 11 is an open response item, and this is one in which explaining your thinking is really important. So we have Phil who made 25% more cookies than Matt. All right, so if we have Matt's cookies, let's say Matt is X. Phil made 25% more cookies than Matt. So X plus 0.25X or 1.25X, we could say as well, right? So Matt's cookies plus 25% more is how many Phil made. The cookies are sold for 25 cents each. Okay, so then we also have a 0.25 here. After the sale, 20% of the combined total of their cookies remained. So after they sold all of them, they still had 20% of their cookies left. So it says create an equation to represent the total amount of money Matt and Phil earned at the fundraiser based on the number of cookies Matt made. So Matt again is X. Explain how you determined your equation. Enter your equation and your explanation in the space provided. So let's start with part A. So for part A, we know that the cookies cost 25 cents each, right? So we're going to multiply 0.25, or that cost of the cookies, times all of the cookies, right? We also know that Matt supposedly made X cookies, right? And that Phil made 25% more than that. So Phil made 1.25X. And so, oops, sorry, actually, hold on, wait, pause. So if we have 25 cents times, let me rewrite this. All right, so we have Matt's cookies, which are X, plus Phil's cookies, which are going to be 1.25X, because he made as many as Matt made, but also 25% more, right? So then this is representing Matt's cookies here, the X, and this is representing Phil's cookies. So in total, that's how many cookies they made together. And then 25 cents is the number of, or the amount of money that they made. So the thing is, this is the number of cookies that they made, but then they had 20% of their cookies remaining. So we have to have this, but then we need to subtract 20% of those cookies. If you remember that when we take away 20% of something, what's left is 80%. So we can also multiply by 0.8 here. rather than taking this amount and subtracting, rather than taking this amount and subtracting 20% from it, we can multiply by 80% because that's what the amount of cookies that are left. And so then this is going to equal the amount that they made. Okay, so this is the total amount of money that Matt and Phil earned at the fundraiser based on the cookies made. The key thing here is that you need to explain how you determined your equation. So let's go down. We don't actually have a lot of space here, so I apologize for that. But let's go ahead and go and take a look at this explanation because this is the part that's important. So for part A, my equation would be, let me make this, okay, would be A equals 0.25 times, and you can combine these if you wanted to be 2.25x, or you can just leave it as x plus 1.25x times 0.8. A is the total amount of money they would make. I multiplied by 0.25 to represent the amount they make per cookie. The number of cookies they made would be Matt's, represented by X, and Phil, represented by 1.25x. Phil made 25% more, so he made what Matt made, which is x and plus 0.25x, which equals 1.25x. Then I multiplied by 0.80 because they did not sell 20% of their cookies, which means they sold 80% of their cookies, represented by 0.8. Okay, so that's how we would write a full explanation of like where you got those amounts, right? Where you got the equation. Now I'm going to show you here, this is the rubric, right? So the total number of cookies made is the sum of the number Matt made and this number that Phil made. But I would say here, what this person actually, up here is actually where they explain it. Let M be the number of cookies that Matt made. So they used M, that's fine. Then the number of cookies that Phil made would be 1.25 M. So here actually what I would say what's not super great about this response, and they would have given this a 2, which is the highest score you could get on that, is that they didn't explain why Phil's would be 1.25 M. So in my explanation, I said to you, right, oh, Phil made 25% more, so he made 1.25 times the number that Matt made, right? So I would include that. I think that explanation is important. But then he explains 25% or 25 cents rather per cookie, and then 80% of what were sold. Okay. Again, naming where you got that 80% is really important, so that's something that I would add to that explanation. All right, so let's look at part B. Part B says, oh, nope, don't want to do that. Phil and Matt made a total of $72 selling the cookies. How many cookies did Phil make and how many cookies did Matt make? Show your work, enter your answers in the work in the space provided. All right, so let's go ahead and do part B. All right, so part B. So we have our equation, and we know they made $72. So where I'm going to put that is in place of A, right? Because that's how much they made. So $72 equals, okay, now we have 0.25 times x plus 1.25x. So this is where we can combine those. 2.25x times 0.8. Okay, so what can I kind of condense here? Let's go ahead and condense some things. So I can multiply all of these together and then divide them by 72, or I can just go ahead and start taking 72 and dividing by those multiples. So let's go ahead and do that. First, divide both sides by 0.25 and 0.8. So we're going to get 72. Let's do that in our calculator. 72 divided by 0.25, and we're dividing by a smaller number, so it should be a big number, right? It's 288, and then divided by 0.8. 360. Okay. So then we 360 equals 2.25x. And so then divide by 2.25. So divide by 2.25 and we get 160. We get 160. X equals 160. This means that Matt made 160 cookies. Phil made 25% more. So Phil made 160 times 1.25, which is 200. So that means that Phil made 200 cookies. Okay, so he made more than Matt because we know he made 25% more, right? So again, we're just showing our steps and explaining how we got that answer. Okay, and then you can double check, right? If they're each 25, uh, if they're each 25 cents, right? And they made 200 and Matt made 160, that's a total of 360 cookies, right? They only sold 80% of them though, so times 0.8 is 288, right, which we saw up above in this answer up here. And then they get 25 cents for each of those. So times 0.25 is going to give us $72, and that's how much they made. So we know that we are correct. We can check our work that way. Now let's look and see for the rubric. It says student response includes each of the following two elements. Determination that Matt made 160 cookies and Phil made 200 cookies. So you need to get the answers, right? And then you needed to show this work. All right, so here again, they did what, similar to what I did, they combined M and 1.25M, made it 2.25M. And then what they did is they multiplied the 0.25 by the 0.8 before dividing. Which you can do that. You'll get the same answer. It doesn't matter how you do that. Notice we still got m equals 160. So if you want to multiply these through, because it's multiplication, you can multiply all of them. And they simplified this decimal and then divided by 0.45. So you can do that in any order that you want to. Both would be valid as long as you can explain that's how you got your answer. Okay? All right, let's look at part C. So next year, Phil and Matt may sell the cookies for 50 cents each. They plan to make the same total number of cookies, so 360, but they predict that they will only sell 70% of them given the price increase, right? So remember, as we make something more expensive, we generally sell less of them. Based on their prediction, should Phil and Matt raise the price of the cookies? Justify your answer. So let's go ahead and do this. So part C, they're going to make 360 cookies, but they think that they will only sell 70% of them, and they're going to sell them for 50 cents. Okay, so let's see, how much would they make? So 360 times 0.7, because they're only going to sell 70%, times 0.5, 50 cents. So that's going to be $126. So they would equals $126, which is more than $72. So they should raise the price, because even though they will sell 10% less, the cost increase will mean that they make more money overall. They will make $126 with this model, which is more than $72. Okay? So that's how you would prove that. Let's again take a look at the rubric for Part C. So full justification for raising the price, right? So if they raise the price to 50 cents and only sell 70% of the cookies, the equation will be A equals 0.5 times 0.7 times 160 plus 200. So that's where I got that 360. In this case, they make $126, which we found over here, right? And that is over $50 more than they made this year, then they should therefore raise the price of the cookies. Okay, so we are in agreement. But again, the key thing that I want you to see here is showing your work, explaining how you got your answers, and using those tools to make sure that you're fully showing your mathematical work here. Okay? Remember those percents too. If we're adding a percent, right, this equation, this question actually has both types, where we're adding a percent, right, an increase, right? Phil made 25% more, so he made 1.25 times the number that Matt made. And then also that loss, right? We only sold 20%, so we only have 80% that or we had 20% left rather, so we only sold 80%. So recognizing how we get those percents and that they need to add up to one whole or 100%. Okay? All right, so I'm going to stop here and I'll do a separate video for the next question just because this is a little bit long.